When you think of the richest man in the world, you probably think of Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. But those guys are nowhere near one man named Musa I of Mali. This man, whose full name was Mansa Musa, had more money than anyone ever in the world. His net worth was $400 billion, 4 times the richest man today. Today we're going to look at who this guy was and how he made all of that dough. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to look at the richest person to ever live. But before we become billionaires, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too? According to the Forbes real-time list of the richest people in the world, number 1 is Jeff Bezos. He of course made Amazon, and his net worth is $108.9 billion. Jeff Bezos is 55 years old, but by the time Mansa Musa was that age, his net worth was $400 billion. Mansa Musa was a 14th century West African ruler. Historians say he was richer than anyone could ever describe. But he was also very generous, and that nearly ruined his country's entire economy. Mansa Musa was born in the year 1280. He was the 10th man in a family of rulers in the country Mali. When he was born, his brother was actually ruling the country. But in 1312, he abdicated to go on an expedition around the world. So one day he sailed off with a fleet of 2,000 ships and thousands of men and women. But after they sailed off, they never returned. It's expected that they got lost somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. This meant that the country of Mali was left to his younger brother, Mansa Musa. As soon as Mansa Musa took over the country, he began expanding its rule. He invaded 24 major cities, and also some other settlements in West Africa that weren't yet countries. But some of the places he invaded include modern-day Senegal, Burkina Faso, Niger, Namibia, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast. And with all of these new lands came a lot of resources and therefore money. Mali soon became Africa's #1 producer of gold and salt. And unlike today, when all of that money is tied to a country's central bank, instead it all belonged to him. Mansa Musa had unlimited access to this money, and he did very extravagant things. He was very religious, a devout Muslim, and one day he decided to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca. To do this, he'd have to pass through the country of Egypt and the Sahara Desert. So he took with him his entire royal court. This included many officials, soldiers, and entertainers. There were also merchants, camel riders, goats and sheep that they used for food, and in total 60,000 men. Many described it like a giant city moving through a desert. All of the thousands of people in his caravan were draped in gold and Persian silk. They had hundreds of camels, and each one was carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold. He also lavishly handed out this gold to anyone in Cairo, Egypt, where he stayed for 4 months. This caused the price of gold to plummet in the region for 10 years, destroying the economy. In fact, Mansa Musa's generosity led to a $1.5 billion economic loss for the Middle East. After Mansa Musa returned back from Mecca, he brought with him a poet. The poet was actually from Andalusia, Spain, and that's because Mansa Musa by now had made a big mark on the world stage. Prior to his gigantic expedition to Mecca, no one on the world stage really knew him. But by now, he was famous worldwide. He paid this Spanish poet $8.2 million. And in exchange, this poet would contribute to the arts, architecture, and literature in Mali. This later led to Mali becoming the center of education for people around the world. Believe it or not, wealthy people would travel all around the world to study in the capital city of Timbuktu. And Mansa Musa is often credited as starting the tradition of education in West Africa. In 1337, Mansa Musa was aged 57. By this time, he had a net worth of well over $400 billion today. But sadly, he passed away that year, and his empire was left to his 2 sons. However, his 2 sons were nowhere near as good as him and could not hold Mali together. The smaller states which they'd invaded broke off, and the Mali Empire crumbled. Also, Europeans came to the region and took much of the empire's land. And that's why Mali is quite a small and poor country today, despite it being so big and rich years ago. But nevertheless, it's still amazing to hear the lesser-known story of Mansa Musa, the richest man to ever live. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill says, "History is written by victors." And that's very true, which is likely why we haven't heard much about Mansa Musa before. So Mansa Musa is 4 times as rich as the current richest man, Jeff Bezos. But did you know that someone actually came pretty close to matching Mansa Musa's wealth, and he was an American? The richest American to ever live was known as Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was a Scottish-American industrialist who nearly had a net worth of $400 billion. He made his fortune in steel, and at a peak, his net worth was $372 billion. But unfortunately for him, he did not break the world record, which remains to be held by Mansa Musa. But now it's time to make your opinion heard. Do you think that Jeff Bezos will overtake Mansa Musa and have a net worth of $400 billion? Vote in the poll in the top right corner and let me know. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.